you a lot for being here. We have the great pleasure of hosting Marcello Duarte, which is sorry, we can't help being stupid, and which is for us for a great workshop on functional programming and domain modeling. But I'm leaving the stage to Marcello, or what I say.
Yeah, just wanted to say, yeah, thanks Marcello for being here, of course. Thanks all of you. Thanks the friends at Co-working for hosting us today. Well, we are advanced as you can see. We are also learners, as you can see. It's a great pleasure to be here. And if you want to keep updated on our activities, I don't know how many of you didn't know us already, but you can subscribe to our newsletter. I'll let this paper go around. If you want to do it, do it. Otherwise, it's fine. No worries. And now over to Marcello. Bravo!
And I also would like to thank Avasco and co-working. Yeah. Yes. Thanks for having me. I need to speak louder. Can you hear me at the back?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So this one is about team cohesion. I have not given this talk before. First time we're going to talk about this with you. I feel that I should be talking about this more. This is very connected to how I live my day-to-day life. I believe software is about people. Software is not about 0 and 1s. Software is about X and Y's, chromosomes, people, males, females, and everything in between. It's people who decide that they need software and they come to you with a problem, and it's people who team up to create that software and develop it. It's people who decided to use or not and make the software completely obsolete. And it's people who decide to pay for it or not and keep you with the job. It's all people. And understanding people, it's very important if you want to build software. If you are a part of a team and you decide that your job is to write code and nothing else, one of the aspects of writing software is that someone needs to plan around it. Someone needs to go to market with it. And you have the option of sitting down and just writing software, and there are consequences of just doing that. The consequences of doing that is that eventually the micromanagement is going to come to you. And it's going to dictate to you, it's tomorrow, the deadline is coming. And you're going to be all controlled, and you're going to be feeling horrible, and it's going to be this horrible environment created around you. You also have the option of taking control of your work and understanding what's the rate of your delivery, understanding your lead time, understanding how you can, your work can become more predictable. And that is something very enjoyable about owning the way we work. This was something discovered in the early 20th century by the lean manufacturing people, who has, one of the pillars is empowering people. And they believe that making people own their process was completely transforming for the process and for the people. When you have control on your processes and what you're doing, you feel heavily empowered and you feel happy. And it feels like a group of people who are surrounded around that are more cohesive. Now, you may think that cohesion, so if you're all here to come and hear about cohesion, someone may question, is cohesion always something that we want? Is that something that to strive for in society, social cohesion? Is that something that you'd imagine you'd always want? What does it look like when a society is highly cohesive, for example? I want you to picture a society in which everybody is going in the same direction and is doing similar things or similar aims. Does that look good in your mind? Okay, so the concept of cohesion is not a new concept. It's a concept that has been explored by sociology for at least a bit more than 100 years. And when sociology was being born, was this gentleman here behind me, Emile Durkheim. He's a French sociologist. He wrote quite extensively about the concept of cohesion. He wouldn't call that way. He would call solidarity, the concept that he would call social solidarity. And he would explore these two paradigms, understanding that society in general is moving to a new thing. That society is changing very much at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. This book is about the division of labor. Right? So this is the beginning. You can imagine the beginning of sociology. One of the concerns of sociologists is, you know, the first ones were like Karl Marx. Right? Karl Marx is thinking, okay, society, this is interesting thing to study. What's happening is that we've got the division of labor. We're moving from feudal society where people are going in the fields. Now there's this industry thing. Some very small amount of people getting very, very rich. The majority of the people are just giving labor. The division of labor is a problem, said Karl Marx. Durkheim it's not that pessimistic about the division of labor. Okay? He's looking at this thing with this eye that he's developing a science around. He wants to call sociology a science, so he's developing a way by which you can call sociology a science. So he say what we study in sociology, the elements of sociology is the facts. Look at facts, social events, things that happened. Not in my mind, it's not about my faith of my racism or my, whatever personal thing. Racism would not happen in the mind of a person, according to Durkheim. Would happen in the interactions, the networks of social events that happen in a network, right? So for Durkheim, there is this pre-modern society and there is the modern society. And the pre-modern society, the way you have this solidarity, it's very mechanical. And how does it happen? So it's a lot more cohesive society if you look back in the past. And I try to picture, for example, the Vikings or the Middle Ages. And you have a society where, in these societies is where you got the phenomena like religions being born, right? New religions, all of these people surrounded by the same belief, right? And if you have this homogeneity, everybody's thinking the same things, they kind of look the same. There has not many migrations happened yet. So the people are very similar. They look the same. They do the same thing. They believe the same thing. Okay, so they are highly cohesive. Like they work really well together. They go and invade other people, and there's wars, and everybody's in the same vibration, and it's really easy to command the soldiers. Take them to war and do whatever you want with them. Very cohesive, with no diversity and no individualism. Okay, so individualism is something that Durkheim described deeply in his studies when he says that we're moving from a mechanical solidarity society into something more like organic, what he calls like an organic solidarity society, in which each of these individuals, they will interact with each other. And now, with migrations, people moving around, we don't believe in the same things anymore. We don't have what he calls it like the common consciousness anymore. Our morals are different. We think about things differently. How is this society cohesive anyway? It's because, he says, because we exchange ideas and we exchange goods. And you need the service that I provide, and I need the service that you provide. And we are becoming more and more, he used the word specialized, okay? This is like industrialization, right? Isn't that like very relevant like this? Very specialized. People are doing this very unique thing, and that's how they contribute. And because you need those contributions, then that's how you get cohesive, because you need to work together, each in each specialization, to achieve something greater. that make sense? Nevertheless, something changed here because you become a lot more individualized. There's a lot more individualism in an organic society. Okay? Which is there's a contrast here. There's a paradox, right? You're becoming very cohesive, but at the same time very individualistic. And when you become very individualistic, the side effect of it is you become very unhappy. He writes a lot, and there's a book about suicide. He really dives into that. People are now responsible for their own future. Before, you're not. Before, you had no control whether you're going to succeed or not. It's all this cosmic consciousness. It's all society, and you're just a part of it. But now you are individual. Now you can make it up to the top. Now you can succeed. You have freedom. Which means it's great, right? It's great to have freedom to succeed. But there's also an option, because you're responsible, that you're not going to succeed. And therefore, there's increased pressure on the individuals of that society. And, and therefore, more likelihoods that you will feel miserable and depressed. And in fact, he made some studies at the time in France and in other regions around France, where he proved that the richer the society, the more the degree of depression and unhappiness in the human beings. Okay? So there's this contrast. You've got this old society where very cohesive but no individualism, and the new society is very organic, highly individualized. It's important to understand this, to understand how groups form, and what is it that brings cohesion in any team when you bring them together. So here's a quote from the book. So the Chan says, "It's our duty to seek to become a thorough and complete human being, one quite sufficient unto himself, or, on the contrary, to be only a part of the whole, the organ of the organism." So he's debating that contrast and paradox. Right, on the one hand, he's saying the lack of diversity increases mechanical solidarity, right? So you've got solidarity is cohesion. So lack of diversity increases cohesion at the cost of individualism. Okay? So if you imagine a society that more and more polarize themselves, we're seeing that happening in the US and other places around the world, where people are looking for more, less diversity, and like this increased nationalism and increased, fear of the foreign. This is a society that leads to higher cohesion, but at the same time, less individualism. And when you have societies which is very cohesive and not individualized, you also, when someone moves away from the law, moves away from the beliefs and the values, the punishment is very severe. Now think about burning on the stake, right? That's what, you don't believe in our God, so you need to be burned. It's so severe because everybody accepts that so deeply. Then that's the cost of being too cohesive, okay? And not respecting the individuality of each of the elements of it. On the other hand, organic solidarity leaves space for specialization and personalization. That's what you gain. You lose, in a sense that you lose that strength of moving in the same direction, but you gain specialization and personalization, which is another way of moving in the same direction. However, it needs to be directed. It needs to be coordinated. Okay? And this is where it plays with our teams and our reality. So I've got a few items that I like to. let's talk about girls. Okay, let's change the subject a bit. Are you okay to talk about girls? Yeah. So it just helps me remember what these things are. So the first thing I want to talk about is goals. If you do anything in regards, have you seen that TED talk with the marshmallow guys trying to mount marshmallow structures? Okay, for those who have not seen, at the end of this, please, first thing, go see that. It's really awesome. And if you're into like team building and understanding how team works, this is really cool. So one of the things that of this study is that you need a combination of basically two things to succeed in that exercise. You need a combination of expertise and coordination. If you have either of one of those only, then that's only so much you can do, right? If you have a really good specialized team, they're really good at what they do, but they haven't got any coordination, then you know, they might be just producing good software, but they're completely unaware of and there's no empathy to anything around them, and they don't understand the pressures of the business, the direction of the business, and how to coordinate with other teams on how to deliver the software at the pace that they could be delivering that software. Okay, so that's if you only have that. And if you only have coordination, but you know no expertise at all, then you won't be able to produce the software either. But if you're using an iterative process, you know that you find that very quickly. Okay, if you don't have the right skills for building whatever it is that you're building. But sometimes you don't need a lot of skills. You just need to find the right skills for whatever you're building. But you need both for teams to be productive and cohesive. You need a coordination of these two things. Okay, so coordination starts with goals. You can only coordinate if it's not your agenda, right? If you're coming in thinking that coordination is management, you're wrong. This isn't about controlling a group of people to get stuff done. Okay, so this is people want to do a good job. They want to do a good job. So they will do a good job if they can align with the right goals. So you need to give an opportunity to your team to understand what is the goal of this endeavor and what is their goal individually as well. And then you have to create alignment of these two things. Okay. So one of the things I do when I run these exercises, we call them the team charter exercises. The first thing I ask the team, what is the problem that you're solving? Okay? So if you guys disappear from this company, then what's going to happen? What is the problem that you're solving? Right? And get their understanding, what is it that they're here to do? And from that point of view, you can ask them, okay, now, how does the world that we live in, and the company or whatever, looks like once you solve that problem? Okay, I call that a vision. So describe to me, in a sentence, what does it look like when the problem is gone? That's a vision. And then we talked about a mission. Okay, so how do you get there? How do you get from here to that world? What's your role in it? That's the mission of the team. Okay? So you're asking the questions, just saying, so why do you come here every day? That's I think an authentic, genuine question. Right? Of course, it needs to come from a good place. You're not challenging anybody. Okay? And there's something else called mission tests. Okay? So a mission test is how would you go about testing that you're doing the right things to achieve your goals if you have to measure that in 3 months? How do you know you're going in the right direction? Okay? You write a mission test. And this is the part where you're understanding the problem that you're solving. That's a very important part of your goal. Now, if you ask any coach, where does he start? This is where he's going to say, this is where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the goals. Any coach, like losing weight, first thing the coach is going to ask, can you give me a picture of when you had the weight in which you want to get to? Can you? And then you get that picture and you put it in a mirror in the morning. The person is going to look at that picture every day to connect with that goal. Okay. So if you are coaching someone to jump on a what's the name of that? You know, they have to imagine themselves on the day of the Olympics running and jumping. And they have to imagine step by step the stadium is full. You have to visualize your goal. That's where you started. Okay? Any framework. just to mention one, there's a framework called GROW. GROW is like start with the goals, and then reality, then outcomes, or yeah, options, and then W is a way forward. So it starts with the goals. And the last bit here is once you determine what is it that you're here to solve, the next thing you need to determine is what is specific about the way you work that is going to lead you to that. It is going to facilitate that mission. Understanding what is a hell of a workplace for you. Now imagine that you're coming in the morning to the worst possible workplace. What does it look like? Okay, now what's the heaven looks like? Get them to describe what is it that they value in work. Those values, those principles, and then practice that they want to uphold to achieve that mission. So I typically print these things with the permission of the team and just sit next to them. Okay, so we could end the talk here, and the rest of the slides are just extra information. Okay, this is enough. Another thing I like to look at when I'm looking at team is impact. And impact is two sides to it. One is the impact that the team makes, and the other one is about their emotional state as a team. Right? Just behind my mindset, I like to think of the words that Douglas puts on the book here. This is the X and the Y management theory. For those who don't know the X and Y management theory, in this book, there's an explanation of there are two predominant paradigms of management: the X paradigm and the Y paradigm. The X paradigm says that human beings are lazy by nature, and they don't want to do a good job, and they require you to tell them to do a good job if you are their manager. Okay, so that's the paradigm X. The paradigm Y is based on the fact that people want to do a good job. They actually enjoy producing good work, and when they're given that chance, then they are more driven, and they become self-managed to that point. So they can mature in their work, if they're given the choice to be a part of what they're producing and to own it. Okay? So here's a magic sentence from the book. Behind any managerial decision or action are assumptions about human nature and human behavior. So every decision that you make as a manager will dictate whether you think your team is lazy or truly self-motivated. Every single thing you do, you're making assumptions. You either believe your team wants to do good work, or you believe they're lazy. And depending on the paradigm you come from, you'll be successful or not, and in coordinating team cohesion. Okay, so this is important because the next bit about impact, a lot of it is creating autonomy, creating a sense of autonomy on teams. If a team is truly autonomous, they will feel, one, really happy, two, very productive, and three, they will be very responsive. They can participate on even predicting the direction of the business and informing the business the direction they should be taking. So a highly mature team is very sensitive to the direction of the business. Okay? An immature team is a team that needs to be managed and controlled and subjected to direction. Okay? And in between, you've got a gray scale that you're going to grow into that understanding that, of course, there are a lot of environmental factors attached to that. Another important aspect of the emotional health of your team is the fact that your team is allowed to say anything. It's allowed to bring up any problem in the organization, and that never goes punished. Okay? It's important in any relationship that there is a combination of two things: vulnerability and curiosity. And if there's true vulnerability and curiosity, then there is psychological safety. You feel safe to contribute, and you can then overcome conflict. You will not be able to overcome conflict if one of these two is missing. Okay? So what is it? What is vulnerability? What is curiosity? If there is a conflict, someone has to be curious. Why is it that the other person is acting that way? And someone has to be vulnerable and say, I recognize that some of the stuff that I do is not good, and I want to do something different about this. Or this, what you're doing is hurting me, or is affecting my work. So someone is to be vulnerable, and someone else, when you hear that, has to be truly curious to how it feels to be on other person's shoes. So this is the basis of conflict resolution. And it doesn't have to be expressed in a cheeky way, but that has to be the underlying understanding of the human interaction. Okay? You can be very adult about these conversations, but it has to be a place of psychological safety. Otherwise, there will never be a place where you can go beyond the conflict. And teams go really, really better when they cross the barrier of conflicts. Okay? That's the only way you can go better, by crossing conflicts. If there are no conflicts, chances are this team is not evolving as a team. Okay? Because they're avoiding conflict. When they're avoiding conflict, they are avoiding the opportunities for improving. Okay? So another thing which is important is to create a sense that what we're making here is making an important change in someone else's life. So just displaying the results, the business results of the software back to the team, it is really motivating for the team. Okay? If you're really engaged when they see the result of that work. And one thing you can do to make sure that these things are in place is to run periodical well-being workshops with the permission and understanding of the team. Another thing to look at is roles. And I don't mean by that everybody should have a role and you have to have a very strong hierarchy, or the name role is particularly important here. I mean by it that there has to be an understanding between collaboration and contribution. If I say the word Wikipedia, the first thing that comes to my mind is contribution. And the power of contribution to that particular community is incredible, right? If you compare the work done in Wikipedia to Britannia or anything, Wikipedia is amazing, okay? All down to contribution. People love to contribute, okay? And people contribute not always in a very collaborative way. We are very much crazy about using the word collaboration in Agile as if there is no Agile without collaboration. And sometimes we push people into a collaborative arena when they're not happy to collaborate or work close with other people, or they're just, their contribution does not lie in collaborating too closely. Okay? I'm being erratic here, probably there's a lot of cohesion there in another direction. But I dare to say that some people contribute without collaborating that closely. Okay? And that has to be respected. That has to be understood and respected. Any mental model that we create with the Agile movement, Lean movement, all these movements, has to be challenged and to be seen in the optic of the team and the group of individuals that you're working with. Okay? And we should look at what is the set of competencies that is within this team, and how these competencies help contribute to the ultimate goal that we're trying to achieve. So say, okay, what are the skills in this team? Okay, how does each of these skills would help us achieve what we need to achieve? Now, is there anything that we would like to learn and improve so we can achieve those goals better? So this is why you measure competencies and skill, not to decide how much you're going to pay or who you're going to give a promotion to, but for learning and for genuinely trying to improve. Another important thing is to facilitate interdependency. So that means that help the teams grow into a space in which they are not independent or codependent. There's something better than independence. Okay, you want people not to be codependent, but you don't want them to be too independent. You want them to be interdependent. And that needs to be facilitated, because there's a number of paradigms and a number of things that you need to teach the team, like thinking for the benefit of everybody and empathizing and all these kind of things. These are things that need to be coordinated and coached into the team. So if anything needs to be resolved within the team, you can resolve that by addressing the team. Okay? You don't need to address an issue by talking to a specific individual within the team. If there is any issue within the team, it's not down to the individuals who are causing the issue. It's an issue of the team. So one thing that increases cohesion is always, always address the team. Okay? Laws. So laws is about making policies explicit, and if there is any policy, to make them explicit, if possible, on the walls that you work, and make them dynamic. Dynamic means that any rule that we follow may change in 2 weeks' time, and I'll make everybody know that that's the case. We're experimenting with regulating the way we work. So if you heard about the forming, storming, norming, and performing, so the 4 stages that every team, every group goes through, and it said that after you do the norming, you start performing. So try and anticipate the norming, but make the norming the norm. That's a lot of norm, which means that keep norming even after you're normed. Keep creating policies, keep reviewing your policies and the way you work, and deciding what is this still compatible to the way we work and our goals. And another thing that I like to use here in the laws is clean language. Clean language is a style of communicating with the team, very much centered around questions. And so it's writing is using language in a way that doesn't interfere with the mental model of your team. So it's a tool set full of interesting questions and constructs that help you communicate with the team in a way that doesn't add your context to the way they think about the problem. The last thing I want to talk about is space. And we got a few things around space. The first thing is that I'm a big believer of the visual elements when we are working together. You walk into your space and you see exactly where your work is. And I think that really helps create cohesion. If you have conversations in the morning around your work, do something like some sort of synchronization meeting every morning, this is a good place to do a synchronization meeting in front of your informative workspace, something that tells you where are you in the progress of that week and whether you are, with your expected progress. So co-located teams are the best possible scenario. That sometimes is a luxury, but you should try and get teams co-located at least part of the time, if that's not possible all the time in your case. When you start representing your work on some kind of informative workspace, you should look to represent the way you work as it is. So when you go to the process of mapping your processes, just describe it the way it is. Don't improve it by moving into the wall. Okay? Start as it is, and then understand what is your current rate of delivery. Then discuss regularly about if there's anything that we can do to improve this. Okay? And I believe that seeing things and moving things around and engaging and talking appeals to different styles of cognitive styles, and this is probably the best way to do when you have a team of creative people working together. I am Marcello. I have a mixed background of sociology and computing for management. I work at a company called OVO, which is an energy business. We produce alternative energy, sustainable energy, that kind of thing. And I got an award as the best Agile Coach of the UK. I'm not the best Agile Coach. I got an award though. And I write some open source code, and I travel around giving talks about functional programming and agility. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcello. I have a question. Very interesting when you say when there's a problem with someone, you should always address the team. So can you give us an example of something like that? When that happens?
For example, if you got someone mumbling in a stand up, someone taking a long time on stand up and talking about what they did the day before, and that thing doesn't really appear to be giving value to anyone else, right? So you ask the question to the team: do you feel that the morning synchronization is giving value to all of you? And always address the team and see if that's a relevant thing for the team. Don't start from your bias, and try to understand what is it that the team think, and let the team explore whatever it is that you think is a dynamic that could be problematic for the team. One exception will be, if someone is being harmful, physically harmful, or if he's abusive, you've got to stop that. That's not cool. So then you have to call the person in a separate place, not in front of the team. Talk to that person alone. Other than that, you should always try and go for more visibility rather than less visibility. So it's good to address the team so the team is aware of the issues. Trying to avoid talking to the team because you don't want the person to feel sensitive about it. It's diminishing visibility when you should be bringing more visibility and more vulnerability. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Maybe it's just a dumb question, but it's interesting what you said about vulnerability, because it's if I have to say one thing in the last 3-4 years, what actually saved me a lot was exactly exposing vulnerability, showing the people in my team that I was not good at doing something, because the expectation for being good in everything or doing perfect magic stuff when nobody else was working actually. You don't have to say one thing that would really do for change the way something was happening in my organization was exactly this one. Exposing the fact that I was not good at this and this and this. Don't expect great stuff. Not even asking for help, but I'm not good at it. Don't expect perfection. Well, if you can help also, or just about this thing. So, sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. Those are a lot of points to make in one's head. I was wondering, how do you track progress of team and individuals across all of those? You have a framework of some sort of.
So first you need to understand why you're trying to track progress, right? So like, what will be your motivation? So if your motivation is like, I want to help the team get better, so I want to get a sense of where they are, right? You can use the metrics that the team is producing on walls to come up with those metrics together with the team. That could be beneficial. That doesn't mean that you can't keep notes or of whatever you think is relevant to keep notes, all these things. You can have a spreadsheet. I have a spreadsheet with each of these areas, goals, impact, for each team, where I put my notes. Okay, how are we doing with goals? Have we done a team charter for this team? Have we done the well-being workshop? When was the last time? So I keep track of the work, because I work with 6 teams at the same time. I need to have a way to store that information. And also because I do a lot of one-to-ones with individuals in the team, I need to keep track of, okay, what is the goal of that person again? So I need to keep some notes. But the tricky thing is that you should be able to display your notes back to the team should they ask you. That should be your mind frame.
you don't keep no scores, sort of.
Yeah, I think every team is unique. So keeping a score would mean that there's a way of measuring them against each other, which I don't think there is. It's like the thing about contribution. It isn't so much about what's the right person to hire for my company. It's about, if I hire this person to my company, how would that person fit and contribute? It's a different paradigm altogether. Everybody contributes in a different way, and they might not be good in certain things that this person is good at, but they might be good at things that we're not good at in this team, which may add and contribute to the team. So that's why measuring, it's really subjective. And another problem with measuring could be that if people become aware that you're measuring, so measure has this interesting property. When you measure behavior, you change behavior. And not always in a way that you expect it to be changed. Right? I'll give you an example. In the UK, we have this chain of supermarkets. It's called Tesco. You have Tesco here? Okay, so Tesco has had, for a while, they have this metric that if the shelves it's empty at the end of the day, then it's poor work of the people because they didn't replenish on time, and therefore people didn't have more products to buy. Okay, so what did the employees do? They removed all the products from the shelf, and right at the end of the day, they went back there and put everything back there. So because of the metric, people had to respond to get a good salary, on get benefits and stuff. So they changed the behavior of the staff, but it wasn't in the way they expected it to be. Does that make sense? So yeah, so be very wary of metrics. And typically, the key word would be how would you like to grow? Ask that particular specific team. How would you like to grow? And okay, how do you know that you're getting there? And make it visible to them and collaborative between you and them. And that will be different from the other team and the other team and the other team.
That's
Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Wrap it
up again.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody wants to join us, we are probably heading to the Barley Court. So it's craft beer with good food, burgers like, and yeah, everybody welcome to that. That's it.
Awesome.